This is my final exam for EDU 455. So we learned a lot this semester about um, assessments with special education. So um, one of the things that we learned was person first language, and with person first language, it emphasizes that the person is before the disability. Um, it is used in order to maintain an environment of dignity, respect, and hope. And it's kind of like a person who is blind is an example of that. Um, the next topic is so norm reference refers to how a student scores compares to other students, while criterion reference refers to how a student scores compare to a criterion like a standard or a goal. And you can use these to assess students, especially in an IEP. Um, and many teachers use both of these different ways of scoring students. Next topic is curriculum-based measurement and curriculum-based assessment. For curriculum-based measurement, it focuses on a broad long-term goal of the curriculum, including the relation and generalization of learning in basic skills areas of like reading, math, spelling, and writing, while curriculum-based assessment is the type of ongoing assessment that involves periodic monitoring of the students, um, like their performance, pretty much. So we learned a lot about RTI, which is response to intervention, and so an RTI is a response to intervention. It has a lot of different components, and it is used in schools to provide effective and high quality instruction for all students, and they make sure that they are progressing throughout the year. And if they aren't and they're struggling, then the students can be provided additional support. The big law that is involved with RTI is the I, ID IDEA Act. It's also known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It has an RTI has 3 tiers. Tier 1 is universal instruction for all students, and this is about 80% of students. Tier 2 is targeted intervention for specific groups of students, which is considering about 6 to 15% of students, while Tier 3 is highly targeted individual groups of students, and that's about 1 to 5% of students. My next discussion will be on the differences between 504 plans and an IEP. So a 504 plan is a plan for how a child will have access to learning at school. So like extra time, or they get to go to a different room for test. There's a lot of different things for 504 plans. An IEP is a plan for a child's special education experience. So this is like a little bit more broader than a 504 plan, and it lasts very long. I had a 504 plan when I was in high school, and after high school, it did end. So yeah. My next topic is discussing the components of an IEP. So some of the components of an IEP is like they do annual goals, progress tracking, so like making sure that they're still progressing throughout the IEP to reach the goal. Another part is special education services, duration of services, so like time of service and when these students are going to be receiving the service throughout the school year, or even just like how many days a week they're going to get the service. And then testing accommodations and transitional goals and services. So again, like extra time on tests, extra time on assignments, getting the test read to them, being in a different room for testing, and overall just like the goals that you want these students to achieve by the end of the IEP, or just the main goal you want these students to achieve. So next I'm going to get in a few different laws and legislations that went into the education field. My first one is Brown versus the Board of Education. What this did for special education was it gave them access to a free, appropriate public education for every student with a disability. The next one is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. This emphasizes on equal access to education, established high standards, and accountability, and requires the inclusion of all students. My next one is Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and this act protects the rights of meeting the students' needs throughout anything like school-wise. The next act is Americans with Disabilities Act, and this one provides civil right protection to all individuals with disabilities in the United States. The next one is No Child Left Behind Act, and this act ensures that students reach high levels of academic standards just like other children in public schools. So you're not gonna like take away high school for a child with disability. Like no child is going to be left behind. Like they are always going to get the highest education possible. And my next one is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This one is a law that makes available a free, appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities. And then my last one is Every Student Succeeds Act. And the purpose of this is to make sure public schools provide a quality education for all kids and ensure families are empowered to support their child's education. My next topic is going to be distinguishing between disproportionality and overrepresentation. For disproportionality is unequal or out of portion. So an example of this would be white children are twice as likely as African American students, and 3 times as likely as Hispanic or Native American students to be diagnosed with autism. For overrepresentation, it is a proportion higher than the average. So it would just be the opposite of my example. My next topic is describing the process of how teachers can determine average performances of their students on assessments. So the way that teachers assess children is on an average test score. It is the sum of all the scores on the assessment divided by the number of test takers. So teachers use tests, quizzes, and other graded courses, activities to measure students' performances. So you add up all the totals the students are receiving on the test, and like if they take 4 tests, then you would divide the total number by 4, and that's how you get the average for the student. My next topic is going to be about standard normal distribution. This is a normal distribution with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. And the formula is Z, which stands for the distribution, equals X subtracted by the mean and then divided by the standard deviation. My next topic is discussing the difference between validity and reliability and why both are important for assessing students. So with reliability of an assessment, it's an assessment tool that is the extent to which it consistently and accurately measures learning. So pretty much reliability is the consistency of measurement. So when you're measuring a student's how they're doing in school and in your class, you want to look for consistency with like their grades and how they're doing and if they're understanding. While the validity of an assessment tool is the extent by which measures what it was designed to measure. So it's the accuracy of the assessment and measuring their accuracy on their assessment assignments and their tests. So that's the difference between those. Now I'm going to get into the curriculum-based measurement. For curriculum-based measurement, it is a method teachers use to find out how students are progressing in basic academics. An example of this would be like monthly testing, like spelling tests for students. You want to test them on words that they should know for their grade level, and doing weekly spelling tests is a way of finding out if the students are progressing. Next, I'm going to discuss the behavioral assessment. So, behavioral assessment helps teachers to understand behaviors. This includes observing the behavior, which may be done in real time or through questionnaires. And this really helps with IEPs because you want to see the behavior before you start doing their IEP so that you know how to help the student better. My next topic is discussing legislation impact associated with child's behaviors in schools. For my first one, it is positive behavior interventions and support, and how it is related to RTI. So the positive behavior intervention and support is primarily concerned with supporting students' behavioral needs and can expand to academic and social emotional needs as 3 domains while the RTI focuses on meeting the academic and behavioral needs of a student to determine if the students are eligible for additional services. The manifestation determination is a meeting where parents of students with IEPs and school staff review information about the student. So they'll review the information that's on the IEP to make sure that it's going to benefit their child or the student. For functional behavioral assessment, it is a process for gathering information about behaviors of concern, whether the behavior is academic, social, or emotional. And they want to gather this information to put into a potential IEP. The 3 types of assessments for this are indirect, direct, and functional analysis. Behavior intervention plan is my next topic, and it's a written improvement plan created for a student based on the outcome of the functional behavior assessment. And then my final topic is how did all of the modules build towards developing an individualized educational program, which is an IEP. All of these topics have a lot to do with IEPs and creating a good IEP. There is many things that go into creating an IEP and many tests and assessments to get the right plan for these students, and it is important to do all these steps to get the right plan so that the student can be successful and can reach their goals that the IEP has in set for them. And it's just a great way to help these students get the education that they need overall. So that is what I learned this semester in EDU 455, and have a good summer.